So perhaps I can ask these two questions, and these two questions I am hoping that we could have a bit more of an understanding of the core narratives. So, like, first question is, what are the central allegations made by U.S., UK, and Israel? And I mentioned these three countries because, it's getting more obvious that they are working together and against Iran recently, and how do you assess their credibility? And the second one will be, in what ways are these narratives strategically timed or politically motivated? Because it seems like everything is in time, in perfect timing, as you mentioned earlier.
So before the revolution, these countries, specifically the UK, France, America, see any country in the East, and when I say the East, I mean from Turkey onwards, as a country that needs to be dominated. It's uncivilized country. Its people are unable to organize and create advanced civilizations. So it's that kind of Orientalism that Edward Said has discussed a lot in his books and other works. So from then on, we come into 1952. They caused a coup d'etat, the United States and the UK, and forced out a democratically elected prime minister, brought back the Shah, which acted as a dictator and as a puppet for their interests, which led eventually to people having resentment towards how they were being governed, how they were being oppressed by the Savak, the secret service that was trained by Mossad and the CIA, and they tortured a lot of Iranians who kind of dissented against politically against the rule of the Shah, to the 1979 revolution. And this 1979 revolution had ripple effects all over the region, and if not the world. And so from 1979, Iran became more independent from US and European interference, or how should I say, use of its resources. And so from then on, this grudge against Iran's independence grew. And as Iran became more powerful over the years, it became more self-sufficient and able to defend itself and able to maintain some kind of success story. Not necessarily, I would say, the best example of what they could have achieved because of internal corruption, but the fact that they maintained their independence from both the Soviet bloc at that time and the Western bloc, and then later on when the Soviets collapsed, from any other bloc that was remaining, even though the United States became the hegemon of the world. And so we come towards 2001 when they invaded Afghanistan, and Iran had assisted the United States and its allies in preparing the attack and giving it information in the attack of Afghanistan. And so Iran, so you can see through media and intellectual thoughts and discussions, Iran is seen as an enemy. And some of the reasons were given was human rights abuses. Some of the reasons were given that it used chemical weapons, even though in the war in Iraq in the 1980s, Saddam was using chemical weapons against Iran, given to it by Europeans, specifically Germans, and assisted by the Americans. But Iran never created weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, and never used them. So then that didn't stick. So they started with the nuclear issue, that Iran is trying to build a nuclear bomb. This is, going back from the 90s all the way up to now. So you're looking at 30, 35 years where they keep saying Iran's going to build a bomb in the next few years, and it never has. So then now the issue is its missile defense program, something that they want to kind of pressure Iran to reduce its range to only 450, 500 kilometers, which is, not enough to hit anything. But why would any independent country accept such a kind of a deal where it won't be able to defend itself? For what reason? And all of these sanctions that have been placed on Iran to stagnate its economy, to turn the people against the leadership, hasn't been successful. It's caused hardship and suffering, especially for people who want to get chemotherapy medication or who wants to get medication that's specialized by certain countries outside of Iran, but they weren't able to get it. So many people died because of these sanctions, not just because of the fact that they couldn't get medication and stuff. However, Iran continues. It continued, never collapsed. It continued, and militarily became very successful. And one of the reasons why it's very adamant that it wants to continue the uranium enrichment is because through nuclear science, it's able to increase its capabilities in pharmaceuticals, in agriculture, and in other fields that other countries are not assisting Iran in. So it's becoming self-sufficient, and it's not many countries in the world that have the full cycle of uranium to enrich uranium and then the other end uses, which is nuclear power and also for scientific and pharmaceutical uses. So the United States mainly does not want Iran's independence. If Iran had accepted the foreign policy agenda of the United States and its Western allies, it would never be pressured. Because you look at the region next to it, you got the Persian Gulf regions, and none of them have a democracy. None of them have an elected democratic leadership or even a parliament. And so there's no pressure on them. So it can't be it can't be democracy as a goal. And then it can't be human rights because these Arab countries and many other countries in the world have worse human rights than Iran. So it can't be human rights. It can't be the nuclear issue because Pakistan has nuclear weapons. It's not sanctioned. They sold them F-16s. So it can't be the nuclear issue. So it just comes down to the fact that Iran doesn't accept US foreign policy, resists it, and enables other countries that want to resist it. It supports them, such as Yemen, in Lebanon, Syria until the fall of Bashar al-Assad, and parts of Iraq where not necessarily the government, but groups within the government, especially the military, paramilitary that helped get rid of Daesh in 2014, 15, 16, that maintained the ability for self-defense. So they had to take up arms by the fatwa of Sayyid Sistani that they have to defend Iraq. And once Daesh or ISIS was kicked out of Iraq or destroyed within Iraq, they realized that they should not put their weapons down and keep it in case Daesh or ISIS attacks again, or another foreign country tries to interfere in Iraq. Because unfortunately the Iraqi military kind of collapsed, as did the Syrian one. It folded when Daesh was attacking it in Mosul and other places. So it wasn't trustworthy. It wasn't reliable. The Hashd Sabi, the paramilitary that is now joined in the military but is still separate, they fight on ideological basis. They don't fight for money. They don't fight for a salary. So you can't. It's very difficult for you to scare them, if you know what I mean, to make them collapse. They will fight to the death for their ideology for the defense of Iraq. So Iran supports them, obviously for this reason, supports them, and it's most probably training or assisting the training of young Syrians who want to resist against Jolani's gang that have taken over Syria, to eventually, possibly like a group like Hezbollah, become a powerful force in the country in defense of the country. Because what happened in the 80s was, or the late, in the 80s when Israel took over south of Lebanon, the Lebanese military and government was incapable of doing anything after going through a civil war, so forth. And even now, when there's attacks, they don't do anything, the Lebanese military. It's only Hezbollah, a group of people got together, trained with Iranian support, and created the Party of God, Hezbollah, that's what it means, the Party of God. And over 18 years of resistance, they managed to kick out Israeli tanks and troops from most of South Lebanon. And it was a big celebration in 2000 when they managed to do that. And so it's possible that in Syria, there will be a group like that as well, where they'll be native to Syria. They want to kick out the oppressive Israelis and defend against them without the central government at the moment being Jolani's self-appointed government, whoever God comes into power, they will be the power that will defend south of Syria. And that's very possible that will happen, most probably, from the speeches of Ayatollah Khamenei. And so Iran acts as this older brother. They always call these group proxies, but they're very independent of Iran. A proxy would be someone who's not independent of Iran and incapable of anything without the direct support hand. We saw Hezbollah fighting for a year against, or how long it was, against Israel just a year or so ago, other than 2006 and other times that it fought. And the Yemeni, they're surrounded. They're not able to. Iran's not really able to get assistance to them as such, but they are firing hypersonic missiles to Israel and closing its airport and air bases and stuff, putting pressure on them. So they're not proxies. They're not controlled by Iran like a remote control. However, what is a proxy is Israel. Israel is a proxy of the United States. It acts in the interest, and without the support of the United States, it would collapse. So the taxpayers' money from the United States that should go rightfully to provide services for citizens in the United States is being used to provide free healthcare for Israelis and missile shields and defenses and prop up its economy, encouraging people who may be of some kind of Jewish descent to go to Israel and get a nice flat and home there and live there. I mean, not now. No one's going now. Most people are leaving now. But that idea would have cost money. Who was paying for that money? Israel's economy is not that diverse. People think it has a great economy. Well, this economy is imploding. It's just being propped up right now. So Iran being the main country defending these resistance and assisting them and being as an older brother, as I was saying, has been the target of the United States ever since. And if it collapses, what they would like to do, because Iran is rich in resources, is split it up into multiple countries. So you will have the Arabs where a lot of the oil is. You have the Baluchis, which are similar to the Baluchis in Pakistan. You have the Azeris, which would be ethnicity of the Azerbaijan. And then you will have the central, which would be the Persians and the Kurds. So they would divide this country as they tried really hard to do with Iraq, which were they were unsuccessful, as they're trying to do now with Syria, and they may be successful. And then when it's divided, it's much easier to control. It's much easier to extract its resources and play them off against each other. And that's the main goal. And once that happens, Iran won't be able to be that central country which connects the Belt and Road Initiative of China to the West. As we know, a couple of months ago, the first train came directly from China with goods all the way to Iran. And once it's connected to Turkey, it will then be connected to Europe through Turkey into Greece and other countries. And from the south corridor to the north for the Russian and African and Indian corridor, they will come to Chabahar, which is in the south of Iran. And from there, it would go all the way through possibly Azerbaijan. I don't know, because Azerbaijan is playing a tricky game of supporting Israel. And Iran may have to go to war with Azerbaijan because they've used Azerbaijani airspace and possibly bases to attack during those 12 days. But it would have connected Iran. Even if they don't go through Azerbaijan, there is the means of going through the Caspian Sea directly to Russia. So this will save a couple of weeks of transit for India to go all the way around the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, which we know at the moment is dangerous and expensive. So even there, they can't go. So they have to go through Africa to get to Europe, right? So Iran is a very important strategic place for China and Russia. And so that's why they were accepted into the BRICS. And that's why I believe Russia and especially specifically China is buying huge quantities of Iranian oil. Obviously, it gets it as a discount rate, so it also benefits, but it's not capitulating to the United States pressure of, sanctions against Iranian oil. It's still buying it and supporting the Iranian economy. And so I believe it's coming to crunch time when a few years the American economy is imploding from within, and it's got so many fragmented party politics where even MAGA is starting to eat itself from inside. Most of these problems is because the United States focus on Israel and support for Israel. If the United States didn't have Israel to drain its resources, one, drain its reputation internationally, two, and drain party politics, three, the United States would have probably maintained a stronger hegemonic ability going forward. But because it's made its name really bad in the world by associating itself with the genocide and the Holocaust, and Europe as well, obviously, but mostly America, and providing the weapons and providing such large amounts of U.S. Financial support to both the Ukraine and to Israel, it's damaging its ability to, as it's a strong country. We say that power is shifting to China, but that doesn't mean the United States is powerless. It just shows that it's not looking after itself. It's like a person who's become an adult and constantly is feeding healthy food to another person and eating the worst food it can for itself, so that its body is still there. It may be still big in size, but its body is becoming weak from internal lack of nutrients, and it's draining its resources to someone else, who I believe, if need be, the Israeli project designers would turn their back on the United States if they know they had another partner that would look after them the way that the United States does. They don't really care about the United States, and we've seen them say that a number of times. They even threaten the United States: if the United States goes against us, we would nuke them and stuff like that. So this is what's playing out, and Iran happens to be a player in that position, and so how it plays its part is very crucial, not just for itself but for the region, I believe.
Thank you, Dr. Reza. And there's just much always to digest, and it's very good the way you describe everything in the most simple way, I believe, because it could always be more confusing. And when you said that America is eating itself from the inside, because it's just recently that within the country, more and more people are speaking out against, what United States has the support that they've been giving to the genocide and other things that's happening around the world. So yeah, eventually, as you said, it's hard when when majority people are waking up and the voices have to be heard. So yeah, and I can see a better future, but it may not be too fast too soon. But I know that eventually, the shift of power will be for the benefit of more people who really needs to be, helped. So Hartmut, I know Hartmut has more to share, so Hartmut will take over.
Hi, Dr. Reza. My pleasure talking to you. I just remember a famous quote, which is not historical secured, but they say it comes from Mr. Amschel Rothschild from the 18th century, and he said something like, "Give me the control over the money, and I don't care who make the laws." And this is exactly the situation with Russia, North Korea, and Iran, because these three countries are not connected to the SWIFT system. And so they are independently. And this is something what, let's say, the West doesn't like to see at all. And concerning the attack on Iran, I see it from the perspective with respect to Gaza, because everything is about timing in this world, and the attacks on Iran were also connected to attacks on Syria, to attacks on Lebanon, and to attacks on Yemen, and these all countries, like you said, who support Gaza. And I don't know why Gaza is so important for them. Okay, I know that they want to establish the channel, the Israelis. I know that they want to explore the gas fields, etc. And I know that they want to establish a new Monaco in this area. And for this reason, they don't like to have the Palestinians there. In the last conversation 2 weeks ago, I said everything is about timing. And at the moment, we can see that Netanyahu has the intention, not for a long time, but he has the intention to occupy Gaza. And France has announced that they are willing to accept all Palestinians to come to France, who will come then to Germany. And at the same time, Russia and USA are negotiating the peace treaty with respect to Ukraine, and Trump and Putin will meet. And interestingly, how can I say? I believe that if Trump is going to make a move, he already knows that he will win, whatever that means, because in my opinion, Russia will get what it wants, and America will get what it wants. And I see it from the perspective of a European. In the moment when Ukraine has a peace treaty, 7 million people will come to Germany from Ukraine because they are depending on food supply. And in the moment Gaza is occupied by Israel, there is a possibility to bring 2 million people from Gaza to Europe. And at the moment, in my opinion, USA is playing a war, or is playing a race. Who will lose the economical situation? Who will lose the economical war? And it looks like that Europe will be the one who will lose the war. And if Europe is economically gone, in that moment, USA will rise again because a huge competitor is gone. And this is the situation, how I see it, why the United States, UK, and Israel are attacking this area so much in order to fulfill their plans with respect to Europe. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's funny because we could say that Europe is an ally, probably like the closest ally to the United States, right? Specifically,
it looks like that, but it's let's say it this way: the Americans.
Well, that's the thing. So they work together when they want to attack Eastern countries. So there was NATO support, UK support, and French support when they were attacking Iran and defending Israel. But it's interesting that the United States also has the capability and capacity to throw any of its allies under the bus. And we saw this a number of times. And obviously, one of the times that we saw is Ukraine literally killing its youth for the war that was kind of instigated by US and Europe. But then when Zelensky, I'm not a supporter of Zelensky, but when the president of that country that sacrificed so much had come to the White House, he was completely destroyed, and his whole dignity was in front of the world, which also stands for the dignity of the Ukrainians, because he's the Ukrainian leader, was taken to task. And not only that, but Germany has been a very strong ally of the United States since the Second World War. And yet when the Biden said that the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 would not be in existence if Russia attacks Ukraine. So Nord Stream has nothing to do with the United States. It's a agreement between Germany and Russia. And if there is no relations, you just turn off the taps. It costs billions to make. It's not something that can easily be replaced. You have to spend more money again to build it. And it was the kind of fuel that was the engine of the German industrial economy that was powering, its economy and making it so successful. And they managed to destroy it without a second thought, knowing that fuel and economy of Germany will be under pressure, and if not, it will be degraded. But they were happy to do that. They were happy to throw Germans and Germany under the bus, if it suited the United States plan of, as you said, weakening Europe. But then now you think about it, okay, you weaken Europe, so now that means China becomes more powerful. Because if Europe was a powerful entity, it was always on your side. It was always supporting whatever foreign policy you had. So by weakening Europe, you've actually weakened a strong ally that China will come and fill its place, because China has the industrial capacity. China has the money that invests in development. China has the infrastructure to grow fast. The United States doesn't. The United States, for it to grow, needs to invest in infrastructure, needs to invest in growth from within, as opposed to just importing, brain power and knowledge from successful individuals around the world to continue its, for example, tech economy and so forth. And so it's shooting itself in the foot. So is this a long plan that is really thought about? Or is it just a short plan where they're like, okay, if we're going to go down, let's take as many people we can down with us. But in that time, a small elite group of people, like the financiers, a small, very group of people, probably like a handful of families, become super rich in the process. So for me,
the situation.
You also listen to just one thing before you continue. Another thing, one of our regular guests, Alex Craner, he opened my eyes to the fact that I keep thinking, what is the what is the thing that is behind all of it? And like you, he explained, it's the finances. The finances control the politics, control the military, control everything. And they want to maintain power. So they want to create internal strife in Europe. And by, having young Europeans go to war to Russia, that group of people that are always in society, the ones who end up causing revolutions, that young group of men, that group will be shifted to a war with Russia eventually in a few years. And then for another number of generations, the countries won't have the ability to resist the small elite group of financiers who are sucking up all the resources of these countries.
Correct. And the companies, when they go bankrupt, they will go from Europe away, and then they can choose whether they go to China or whether they go to the US.
I mean, manufacturing may go to China, but they'll maintain their finances in Europe. So they may manufacture something there, but once it's manufactured, it comes back. That's where the money is really being made. They will maintain themselves in Europe and in America and continue just basically using another location to manufacture. But if you bring Iran into the equation, Iran is a country that is not only rich in resources, oil and gas, second largest gas reserves in the world, and the fourth or the fifth largest oil reserves. But it's also a country that believes, and it's one of its mottos is independence, And so this independence threatens these financiers, these people, and their elite underneath. So this very elite group and the elite underneath, which control their politics, the media, the intellectuals, the universities, all of these kind of like rely on this small elite of financiers to have their level of positions that they have, and so they all work tandem to make Iran the enemy, and so it's always directing people's attentions away from the real problems. There's a lot, huge problems in the UK. I was there for a week or so, and problems with unemployment and problems with the economy and the health service, and the racism has been encouraged to try and blame foreigners for these problems instead of the successful governments that have come and had bad policies. And that's something that's been replicated in other parts of the world, where try to blame specific group of people for the mismanagement of the government. And even in Iran, there's been issues with mismanagement, electricity going out, water shortages, which they didn't have during Raisi's time. But when this reformist president has come in and his cabinet, unfortunately, a lot of problems have arisen. And so when there was the issue with attack on for the 12 days by Israel, there were a small number of Afghans that were hired who were assisting Israelis. Majority were Iranians, but a small number of Afghans. And so the whole focus was put on to kick out all the Afghans, even legitimate ones. And so a large number of Afghans who probably, a lot of them are not legitimate, like in the millions, but there's millions who are illegitimate, registered and everything, were kicked out. So attention was taken towards there, where the economy is in the hands of the government in Iran. So this is a problem that exists everywhere. Iran is not immune to it. But the way that the United States and Europe, I believe, want to distract from all of this is utilizing the greater enemy, which is always the East, Russia, Iran, China. And I think if they can't handle Iran with its sanctions and everything, how are they possibly dreaming about going to war with China against Taiwan, a country that is much more formidable than Iran is, a country that has much more capability, much more resources to defend itself and to counterattack, and it has nuclear weapons as well. So I genuinely think that I don't think they necessarily think. I think maybe they think they're gonna win, but we saw that with the 12-day war that they didn't. Because if they were winning, why did they stop? If they were about to finish off everything, why did they ask for it to stop? And even if Iran was asking to stop, why would they stop? They never stopped when they invaded Iraq. They never stopped when they invaded Afghanistan or Syria or any of these countries. Why is it after 12 days, footage is being blocked from coming out of Israel and Tel Aviv, and all of a sudden they want to stop, you know? So I believe that I think they know to some extent they've bitten more than they can chew. But what do? Do they say, okay, fine, we let Iran go? They can't. Because if they do that, they've lost face. So it's like, I'm about to lose. I'm in a fight. Let me throw some more punches. Maybe I might get a knockout somehow accidentally. You know, when you're closing your eyes and you're just throwing punches like that. That's what I feel like they're desperate now. They're desperate. Because they tried the economic sanctions, that didn't work with Iran. They tried the military option recently, that didn't work with Iran. They tried the psychological, starting riots and protests, that didn't work. So another thing they'll try to do is try and call internal strife, maybe different with the different sectarian groups. They tried that a few times, it didn't work. Maybe they'll try again. But what other options do they have? They're running out of options and they're running out of time. It's either Iran's going to collapse or Israel's going to collapse. And as one of the Chinese academics said, he goes, China existed 5,000 years before United States came, and it will exist 5,000 years after the United States. And same with Iran, one of the oldest civilizations. It was around thousands and thousands of years before. And so I don't think it will be Iran that will collapse. They may get some, hit and have damages or whatever and be hurt. But ultimately, the project or the Zionist project that is trying to forcefully implant it. Many people around the world have seen the true face of Zionism now. No matter what happens between them and Iran, I see posters and I see, posts everywhere where people from around the world say Israelis are not welcome. Something that we couldn't imagine 3 years ago, before the 7th of October, that people would have the guts to say it. Now they're waking up and they're becoming louder. And so Israel's becoming desperate, but I don't think he has the capability of overpowering Iran, especially now that the Iranian I think large majority of the Iranian power comes from its citizens being behind its back and supporting it. If the citizens were supporting the attack, that would have had devastating consequences on the whole war. But because the citizens rallied around the country, and it doesn't look like they're going to rally around the United States, they're going to stay rallied around the country, Iran and its leadership, it's become very difficult. There was a lot of Iranians who assisted finding safe houses for the Mossad agents, or places where they had factories where they were making drones. A lot of it was from citizens taking action and supporting the authorities to counter this. So I believe there will probably be another attack. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not gonna prophesize anything, but it feels like they want to do one other attack. Hopefully, it won't be nuclear. But if they do, I think this time Iran will hit even harder than what it did before, which was very hard anyway. Some say it was like a quarter or a third of Tel Aviv got damaged, which is not a small feat in 12 days. And this is Iran using its old technology. A lot of the missiles were first generation. They were not necessarily the current generation, which is much more advanced, faster, more powerful. And I don't know if it's true, but they were testing a Shah 5, which is capable of traveling 6,000 or 7,000 kilometers and carrying a payload of 2,000 pound TNT. So Iran is not going to sit back and wait. It's going to prepare. It's already, I think, prepared its defenses with Chinese support, possibly buying also the J-10, planes to be able to counter them on the sky. So if that happens, Iran will hit them harder. And I don't know how much more the Zionists can survive because they're bleeding money, bleeding economy, bleeding manpower. Their soldiers are just either committing suicide or not wanting to turn up. The citizens are leaving the country. You've heard the news about them going to Cyprus and Cypriots becoming unhappy because house prices are going up there and they're creating their own ghettos in Cyprus and probably many other countries because a lot of them have dual nationality. So they'll go to their country of birth, United States, Europe, Australia, whatever it is. So it's becoming much more unsustainable. And if that collapses, it would be very difficult to see what excuse the United States would try to use against Iran if there is no Israel the way it is now. If Palestine takes over, America would have, it would be more difficult for America to try and attack Iran and fold it up because Israel is kind of the main instigator of the conflict between United States and Iran. And if that's not there, United States will be a little bit more difficult for it to try and attack Iran. Will be weaker to do that. That's my thoughts. Again, I'm not Nostradamus, so I'm not going to prophesize anything.
I think if Iran would be attacked by United States, really attacked, the point is that Iran could not be conquered or occupied in a classical war with troops, etc., like Iraq. For example, the military game Millennium Challenge 2002, which was played by the commander and general, General Paul van Riper from 2002. It showed that that he was the one who played in the role of Iran, and he was using light signs and he was traveling with motorbikes, and so he had no digital communication, and he could attack the troops very, very tough. And as the American the American leadership was so annoyed by that, he had to explain his next move before he did it, so that they could tell in front of the Congress, look, we can win against Iran. Yeah. So it's nearly impossible to have a real war, to fight a real war against Iran. So the only thing is to use rockets or planes. Yeah. And this is the only way by this war you can on one hand you can destroy the country totally. This would lead maybe also to a third world war. Yeah, because we should not forget that Russia has also tsunami bombs, which are placed in the west, in the front of the western coast, and they can direct the tsunami direction. So UK would be wiped out by water immediately. And these are things which someone has to put in consideration. And the point is that because you said it, Iran is so rich concerning resources, but also from respect to wealth and money because of its old history. But a lot of money is frozen in Europe. And if Iran would have the possibility to rise again, it would be one of the richest countries in the world. And the interesting thing is, for example, in comparison to UAE, to Saudi Arabia, etc., all these countries, they bought American weapons. And from Drago, we know that the weapon industry in the USA has huge contracts with respect to maintenance. And if they don't maintain the weapons, they cannot use the weapons after 6 months. So these countries are also of their wealth under control of the West, more or less, especially also with respect to the US dollar, to the oil dollar, and the transaction of the money, which was done and maybe is done already also still in the US. And if Iran would become such a wealthy country, without having this currency and without being under military control, this is something no one in the West wants to have.
A lot of the resource, a lot of the financial wealth created by the Arabs is kept in the West. And so they're scared that if they go against the United States, what happened to Russia, where their $600 billion or euros worth of financial assets was frozen, it would happen to them. I think they have more than 600 billion. They have several trillion, because what they would do is they would generate wealth from the sale of the oil, and they would then reinvest it back into American businesses and property and stuff like that. You know, we have the Shah in the UK and multiple areas of Manchester that has been developed by the Qataris, so that it's easy for the Western countries to, if they are threatened by these Arab countries, these Persian Arab countries, they would freeze their assets as they did with Russia, and so they become reliant. Unfortunately, they're not independent. Most of those weapons that they have probably has kill switches. So if they don't want their weapon to be used against someone, and we know that because in the Pakistani-Indian battle a few months ago, there was a reason why they didn't use the F-16, because it was in the contract when they bought the F-16 from America that they're not allowed to use it against India. Well, why did you buy a plane that you can't use against your enemy, your major enemy? And if they probably did use it, there would probably be a kill switch, right? They're not going to give these countries weapons that they will think will fall into the wrong hands at any time. You know, like it did in Iran. You know, the F-14. Iran was the only country that had it. Even Israel didn't have the F-14, but it didn't have a kill switch, right? And so they were managed to use it in the Iran-Iraq war to devastating effect, because they had very good radar and long distance it could attack, and it was, you know, able to take down multiple planes at the same time. So they would have built in their weaponry kill switches that these countries would never know how to find, how to deactivate. They just don't have the manpower, the capabilities, the resources within their education system to try and sort it out. But Iran has been able to do that. You know, it has been able to create weapons that will defend itself indigenously. And that's where its strength lies, in its people. It's not in the oil fields, or it's not in, because these countries have the oil fields, but they don't have the strength. It relied on its people, and it bleed on its people, and it toiled, gave blood, and it sacrificed, and it became independent, quite, you know, with a strength. And again, as I said, the internal dynamics is for another show, for another day, but that needs to be also filtered out, you know, the internal corruption that exists. But overall, Iran, as you said, can be an example to these countries, but again, it requires them to have leadership that wants that kind of an example. I don't believe the leadership of these countries they're happy to be reliant on the United States because of the comfort and the luxuries that it brings without them making an effort. And because they don't want to make the effort, they don't want to toil and work hard. Like many European countries became successful because they worked hard. Nothing was given to them, you know. I remember seeing a documentary about, I believe it was Porsche or just it was a German company, and they said, "How do you make your product so good?" And then he said, "Well, we look at it, even though it's good, and see how we can improve it. So then we improve it, and so that's why the quality maintained and so is good. These countries work hard, and they still work hard to maintain that quality. Japan, you know, these countries, others. So these other countries, they just don't have the desire to work hard. They're happy to bring in a car, a luxurious car, you know, a SUV, the weapons, and even to be honest, the weapons. They're probably many of the engineers who maintain it are not even from that country. You know, they've flown in American military personnel who are hired at expensive rates to maintain it. So America is making, you know, good money out of these people. And as soon as you said, they leave, I wouldn't 6 months. I would say within 6 days to 10 days, it will stop working. They just wouldn't have the clue of how to maintain it and how to restock it because if the stock of weapons runs out. Thing is a quite advanced country, Israel, and yet it was running out of its missile defense, you know, the batteries, because they're manufactured in the United States. So these countries are definitely not as advanced as Israel when it comes to high tech, and yet Israel was running out of weapons that it relies from the United States to defend itself. So I don't really necessarily think that these Arabs, I think maybe their people will see the dignity of relying on oneself, and then the problems will start for these Arab countries. And so that's why they're happy to help demonize Iran with the United States and other countries to try and make Iran seem the baddie, even though if you look at all the things that have taken place in the last year and a half, 2 years, from 7th of October, all the attacks, all the provocations against Iran, Iran has been the one who's tried to be the more logical, pragmatic, not acting emotionally, not reacting immediately because it was attacked. Either its embassy in Syria or it was attacked last October and it never replied. And in some senses, again, that's the internal issue that we were discussing, where it should have attacked. It should have been, you know, stronger in its reply. But again, overall, at least demonstrated that it's not the rogue state that it's presented in the movies and in the news. It's actually a very responsible state. And I had a lot of UK and American friends. Some of them work in, you know, media, Hollywood, some of them in academia, and then like we were very surprised that Iran is the more responsible one, and Israel and its allies are the more irresponsible. And I said, well, this is something that we knew, someone who's studied Iran for a while and is Iranian, but it took, unfortunately, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to die, and Iranians and Syrians and Lebanese to die in the last 2 years for many other people who are very intelligent to see the reality that the United States is not the harbinger of peace and democracy that it like to show that it is, or even Israel. So I think there's more tough times to come. I don't think it's ended now or it's going to end anytime soon. But I think Iran is in a strong place to defend itself. And I do believe Iran needs to strengthen its defensive ties with the Russians and the Chinese more. I don't think they're strong enough. I think that's because of maybe hesitancy from the reformist president that we had, unfortunately, because he's still looking to the West and trying to. He believes he can maybe his cabinet and himself believe that they can resolve the issues with the West, which completely surprises me. But I'm hoping at least the military side pushes for a closer relationship with Russia and China, and to work closer with them because they all kind of do rely on each other now. They are a trio that is the only one that's really not having a proxy war is going to be China at the moment. And that could be next year. We don't know. Taiwan could be activated as a proxy war to try and weaken China that way. And if that happens, then clearly know that the trio that we discussed many times, you know, the Iran, Russia, China triangle, is the key axis or key group that the Western allies, the Western axis wants to weaken a lot. And if they weaken these three, it'd be very difficult for anyone really to stand in the way for them to continue their unipolar kind of hegemony of the world, other than these three.
Before I want to implement also a philosophical point of view, but before I do this, I want to give Grace the word because she has a question from a viewer.
I think part of the things that Dr. Vidari and Hartmut you shared already might have answered this question. But before I share that question, I just, when you, Dr. Reza, when you were mentioning about who, whether it's going to be either Iran to fall or Israel, and I remember that many historians refer to what Henry Kissinger said before, and this was, I guess, in 2012, and he did say that in 10 years, that Israel, there will be no longer Israel. So he might really know something that's being planned, as you said, is like a project, although we're thinking it's a Gaza-Israel project to dissolve Gaza. But, as we know that, for all those ill intent, it could also cause Israel, the disappearance of Israel as a nation. So I thought of that. And so the question is, said with the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, what moral and strategic responsibility do Arab nations have to move beyond statements and take decisive, united action to end the genocide and ensure long-term justice for Palestinians? And as I believe you mentioned some of that. And in this question, what I also kind of remembered is that expression that blood is thicker than water. But could it be also possible that maybe there's not a lot of native Arabs in the Arab countries because most already have been forced migrated to other countries? So in short, like in Syria, there's less of the ethnic Syrians than though, so, whatever, if you have any thoughts on that question.
Well, Syria was the only country until Bashar Assad's fall that was actually providing real support, or Arab countries was providing real support for the Palestinians, with enabling them to have offices there, training there, and supplying military resources where possible to both Lebanon and to Palestinian resistant fighters. So out of all the countries, actually, Syria was the most supportive of until Bashar Assad fell. And no, they're all Arabs, all the Persian Gulf Arab countries. None of them migrated anywhere. They're all Arabs. The Egyptians classify themselves as Arabs. Jordanians are. There's a large number of Palestinians who moved there after the Nakba, but they're all Arabs as well. So the only group that is not Arabs or sees itself as not Arab would be Turks and Iranians. Iranians, obviously, a mixture of Azeri, Persian, Kurd, Baluch, and the Turkic people originally from Mongolian Central Asian plateau. So they don't see themselves as Arabs either. But it's really, if you classify it as a ethnic issue, which it isn't, it's an international issue. It's not even a Muslim religious issue. It's an international issue. Because we see many countries like Colombia and other countries that, or South Africa, which is brought Israel to the ICC and other courts. They're not Muslim countries, but they're showing that they're against the genocide. It's interesting that we say that what can the Arabs do to help? I mean, I would say just to the Arabs who are in the way, move out of the way. The Yemenis have said, and I believe they would do this if they were able to do it. The Yemeni leadership said, if Saudi Arabia moves out of the way, we will send army to defend Palestinians. And I believe it would do that. The Yemenis have proven themselves with the least resources to be able to do the most against Israel and defend the Palestinians. So when they say we will send 100,000, soldiers to defend Palestinians, and if just Saudi Arabians move out of the way, we will go up, I believe they would do that. So the Arab countries and the Muslim countries, Turkey is a Muslim country. Their leader claims a lot about the genocide taking place, but it's one of the top trading partners of Israel. It's the main supplier of fuel from Azerbaijan through Turkey to Israel. It supplies it with food and some of its things, that materials that it needs for its construction and its military. So these Muslim countries, they just need to stop acting. They don't need to do anything against. They just need to stop supporting and move out the way when need be, so others can take effect. And I genuinely believe that if the Arab leaders of previous centuries saw how these Arab leaders are dishonoring that code amongst Arabs of defending each other, because Palestinians, they're not Shia, they're Sunni, they're Arabs. And these Arabs are not defending them. I think many of these leaders that they, historical leaders that they look up to and admire, will be very ashamed of them and very distraught by what they see. These Arab neighbors from Egypt, unfortunately, to Jordan and the Arab countries around them are providing, because everyone's saying, okay, fine, you're not allowing aid to go in from the Israeli side. What about Egypt? Why doesn't Egypt allow the aid to go in? Egypt is not fighting the Gazans. Why is it not? He's saying, I'm going to allow aid to come in, and no one's allowed to stop it. No Israeli or no one's allowed to stop it. We're going to send aid in. They won't. They act in the interest of the Israeli and the United States foreign policy. So it's become, it's really past the discussion of honor and dignity. Is past that now. It's come to the point of humanity where everyone is now responsible to do whatever they can, even a podcast like this, even protesting in your hometown, even rallying, or whatever it is people are doing, even, you know, those flotillas, everything to keep the voice of the Palestinians who are literally starving to death. Literally, they are fading away into history. I don't think they will lose. I do believe eventually they're going to be successful. But how many have to suffer before people like Piers Morgan or these people who claim they talk about, you know, the freedom of the press, wake up to the fact that a genocide has been happening for 2 years? It's not, the genocide didn't start a few months ago whenever this starvation started. It was planned, and ethnic cleansing, genocide, and Holocaust has been going on for 2 years. And so the more we talk about it, the more we put pressure on mainstream politicians to do something. I don't know. I generally don't know what to do. I've come to that point where I pray for them. That's the least we can do, is pray for them. The second thing we can do is use our tongue, our ability to speak about the issue and remind people that that hasn't finished. You may not see it in your, you know, mainstream legacy news, but it's still happening. It's worse now than it was 2 years ago. Anyone could not imagine anything worse than 2 years ago or a year ago when the bombing was happening, and that's happening now. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm someone who believes in God. I don't know if it's going to come to a point where God will say enough is enough and He will intervene. I believe that's possible. He might do that. I don't know, but it's made me really lose hope in any kind of respect that I had in the rule of law that I believed, or I thought I believed, that Western countries really abided by and promoted. That a country like this is committing what it's committing and is still being supported militarily, financially, politically by the West. Don't listen to the Macron saying, "Oh, I'm going to recognize Palestine," or English Prime Minister saying, "I'm going to recognize Palestine," as any indication of the change of their foreign policy. Do not be tricked by that. It's just a facade and a lie to trick, misinform, and misguide people. They will continue supporting until the last minute the Israeli project collapses. They will continue supporting it because they're very much embedded with the idea of controlling the East through them. But I lost that at least little bit of hope that I had, that many of the institutions or some of the institutions genuinely wanted to promote human rights and whatever in these in abroad. But I've completely lost that, I think, along with other people. So go back to your question. I think Arab countries and any country should just stop having trade I mean, honestly, I'm disappointed in China. China provides $19 billion of export to Israel. It just takes China to say we're not going to export anything else to Israel, and that a country will collapse. The economy of that country will collapse. You can't replace $19 billion worth of whatever it is they need in a short space of time. So I don't know. I'm going to pass it to Helmut because I don't know what else we could do, or I could advise the Muslim countries that they don't already know, Arab countries, that they should do that they are doing.
Thank you so much, Hartmut.
Yeah, I want to mention something. For example, Bezalel Smotrich, the Israel finance minister, said in an interview with Kol Barama Radio on the 2nd January 2024, and this was 3 months after starting the war, or after starting this operation, that if it were up to me, I would encourage the voluntary immigration of Gaza residents. That would be the best for them. And this was in January 2024. And we have to understand that many news or interviews or the mainstream media, there are not all messages are for us. Several messages are, for example, the people who are higher than the usual people. And such a statement, for example, is also an indication for investors, or could be an indication for investors. And I told this in the past podcast as well, that if, for example, if you want to establish a complete new city in this area, and you have the Palestinians there, and you want to live in a peaceful way with the Palestinians, and you are exploiting the gas fields, you're exploiting the oil fields, and the Palestinians would see how rich the area could become if someone would let them. In that moment, only 3% of 2 million, which is 60,000 people, are enough to establish a terrorist group or terrorist organization. And 60,000 people who establish a terrorist organization is a threat for all investors. So for this reason, if you want to establish a complete new city in this area, if you want to establish a new Monaco in this area, or the Israeli people want to establish a new Monaco in this area, from their point of view, I suppose you have to free Gaza from all Palestinians, so that you can so that you have a peaceful, prosperous Israeli city which can flourish in this area. And this is the reason why they want to bring them all out of Gaza. This is my personal opinion. It's an economical situation. And I want to mention something with respect to Iran. I also try to see things from a historical point of view and also from a philosophical and religious point of view. And we don't have only the Jewish Zionists, we have also the Christian Zionists, and these Zionists work close together. And Iran is the center, which is much older than any Zionism. It has the Zoroastrical wisdom, and in a world which should go all in one direction, yeah. So everything is functional equally. A country which is resisting and which has this knowledge and this culture of the Zoroastrical wisdom is a threat and disturbs this goal. This is the last question what I want to ask Dr. Reza, what he thinks about that.
I think Iran, as you discussed, it's an ancient country, so it's an inheritor of ancient civilization, infused with the love and passion they have for the Islamic Shia faith, specifically the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. So Imam Hussein was the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. And after Prophet Muhammad passed away, there was dispute about who should be the leader of the Muslim community. And this led from his passing away until his grandson was cornered in the land in Iraq, Karbala. So in a few days, 20 million people from around the world and in Iraq will go to pay pilgrimage to visit the shrine of Imam Hussein. And I hope I can take you to so you can see this spectacle. It's wonderful. They take from their own wealth, their own money throughout the year, they save so they can feed and house the pilgrims of Imam Hussein with their own money. It's not government sponsored at all. It's all individual Iraqis' money, people who have just been through years of war. And so this love that the Iranian people have for Imam Hussein and the message he had, and one of his messages was he'd rather die as a free man than be alive and be a slave. So this idea permeates the Iranian society and specifically the Iranian government and the Iranian military. And that's why those generals who are martyred, they believe they were martyred. They were happy to be martyred in the way of their belief ideology. You can't scare 90 million people if majority of them wish to go like a warrior, like a spiritual warrior, go out fighting. And if they win, they've won. They won the battle. And if they lose, they become martyrs. They still won. So they have nothing to lose in that sense. So I don't know to what extent Israelis and the Americans have realized this very specific aspect of Iranian society. I do believe they haven't quite fully caught onto this, but this is the aspect of Iranian society that has made it not fear the enemy. And so because of this, I do believe that Iranians will succeed eventually. I do believe that the Israeli project will collapse. It can't, continue the way it is. And as you said, Henry Kissinger and many other even Israeli academics and politicians have started saying this, that Israel, the way it is, will not exist. There'll probably be, there'll still be Jews who live in the region with Palestinians, and there'll be one state where they Palestinians and Jews, but Jews native to that country, not people who claim to be Jewish and they come in from the United States and stuff or Europe. It will be people who are native to that country, and they will live in one state, in one country together, and there won't be an apartheid like it is now. There won't be an ethno state like that. So I do believe eventually that will happen. It's just how many more Palestinians have to suffer, give their lives. I believe that Riviera idea is never going to happen. That idea of the Monaco on the Israeli coast is never going to happen. I do believe that God is watching, and He will not allow 2 million Palestinians to completely be killed. I know that many of them have been killed and lost their lives, women, children, men, all innocent. But I do believe that a time will come. You can call it karma, or you call it divine justice, or whatever you want to call it. Things will happen that the Israelis could not have planned for. Things will happen that the world could not have planned for. And as I said, Israel will collapse. Many of them would leave. They'll go to different countries. Those who are probably part of the apartheid system itself, and those whose maybe parents were native, grandparents were native to Palestine, they will remain, and they say, look, we've been here many generations. We didn't come to colonize. We're from this land, and the group will live with Palestinians, and it will be a mixed system of governance. But I do believe that eventually it will collapse, and Iran will continue as it is, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you. Real pleasure talking to you, Dr. Reza. My pleasure.
Thank you, Ahmad. It was
Thank you, Dr. Reza Janvidadi. But if you had one message for young people in the West who are questioning mainstream media and looking for truth, what would you say?
So I would say what I think you guys know Jeremy Corbyn. He almost became Prime Minister of the UK. He was the head of the Labour Party, and they did a anti-Semitic campaign and got rid of him because he was a true leftist. And his idea of true leftism, he genuinely wanted to help the working class and empower those who are suffering from elite taking resources and so forth. And he said something to me when we interviewed him in 2012. I said to him, "What would you advise young people?" And he said, "I would advise them to read the history." To read the history of their country. So if you're in America, read the history of America, read the history of the United Kingdom, read the history of Germany, Europe, and see who came into power, how they came into power, who was oppressed, who was not oppressed. There's always a pattern that repeats itself. Empires rise and fall, empires rise and fall. And he said, go and read history. Don't rely on a quick TikTok or a short 2-minute video to understand the context of, thousands of years of history. Go and read books, read different histories of countries, especially the country you're from, and you will understand much better how the world, and read it with an open mind. Don't read it to prove something that you already believe is the truth. Read it with an open mind, and it will guide you to the truth. It will help you to understand how the world works. And when you see something, even though if it's presented very, nicely packaged on legacy media, you don't necessarily fall for it. You're aware of the patterns of the history, and then you will see where the reality and the truth is. And that would be a good place, I would say, for young people to go and read.
Thank you very much. I love that. And so we got work to do, everyone. Read your history, study well. And actually, it's more exciting. It's very exciting to study now because you're seeing a lot of the things that you've read is happening. So, okay. So take care. And thank you, Dr. Reza Janvidadi. And you could follow him in Instagram or LinkedIn or anything more to follow you.
I think I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Twitter and Facebook. And this is Grace Asagra of Quantum Nurse Freedom International live stream and Hartmut Schumacher. We welcome and we are grateful for everyone. Take care.